Welcome everyone. My name is Enid Slack, and I chair the Intergovernmental Committee on Economic and Labour Force Development in Toronto. We call it ICE for short. I'd like to welcome you all to today's session on big data for public good. I can see from the audience, and I understand there's lineups outside, that this is a pretty hot topic these days. We're delighted to be co-sponsoring the event with IPAC, the Institute of Public Administration of Canada, who will be saying a few words in a few moments. Before we begin, I'd like to tell you a little bit about ICE, for those of you who don't know about us. Our committee was established in 1997 by officials in the Government of Canada, the Province of Ontario, and the City of Toronto. Today, our members still include representatives from all three orders of government. From the Government of Canada, we're represented by Industry Canada, Service Canada, Citizenship and Immigration Canada, and FedDev Ontario. At the provincial level, the Ministry of Citizenship and Immigration, the Ministry of Economic Development and Trade, and the Ministry of Research and Innovation, the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. And at the City of Toronto, we have representatives from Economic Development and Culture, Employment and Social Services, and Social Development, Finance and Administration. The purpose of our committee is to help coordinate economic and labor force development activities of the three orders of government and the various departments and ministries within each order of government in Toronto. We bring together critical players to share information on their programs and projects and to ensure that there's some coordination among them and not too much duplication and overlap. We meet monthly to share information. We sponsor an annual network meeting, and we host forums such as the one today. We also commission research, and currently we've commissioned a paper on big data and the public policy uses and implications of big data. For more information on the ICE Committee, you can go to our website at www.icecommittee.org. So I hope you enjoy the event today on big data. I'd like now to turn the microphone over to Jarrett Myers from IPAC Toronto Region Group, who will say a few words about IPAC and also will introduce our moderator for this afternoon. Thank you.
I assume I don't really need to use the mic. I assume that everybody can hear me. So I just wanted to... Should I use the mic? Okay. Make it a little bit more formal. So really just want to say a very warm welcome to everybody in the room, and a thank you to all of our speakers who are taking the time to give us their insights and share their analysis on what we think will be a very, very important topic going forward in the future, and it is already indeed a very important topic. On behalf of IPAC, again, just wanted to thank our speakers, and we'll be doing some formal thank yous towards the end of the presentation. And then in terms of a little overview of IPAC, IPAC is a not-for-profit professional services organization which is focused on promoting excellence in public administration. And we'll be holding a number of events and has been for a number of years, and we'll be holding a number of events related to innovation in public administration, collaboration in public services, and judging by the turnout of the meeting today, probably one or two events in the future on open data and big data. So I just wanted to, again, say a very warm welcome. Indicate that if you haven't picked up on it, the meeting is being recorded. And we do have a live Twitter stream. So if you would like to tweet, you're more than welcome to do so. And we'll be able to incorporate that into some of the discussion for the moderated part of the roundtable discussion. And the hashtag is Big Data for Good, and that's BIGDATA number 4 and GOOD. And so with that, I'm just going to quickly introduce Bianca Wiley, who will in turn introduce our speakers for today. And Bianca is the founder of the Canadian Institute for Open Data, and I'm sure Open Data Institute. And she's had a lot of experience in working with government and not-for-profit organizations and private sector organizations and citizens in connecting them through the use of big data. She's a trained facilitator and is very passionate about this space. So I'm going to turn it over to Bianca.
Cool, thank you. Good, good. Okay, hi everybody. Really nice to be here this afternoon and to see so many people in the room. I'm getting excited about this topic, as I am. As mentioned, I'm the co-founder of the Canadian Open Data Institute. One of my other co-founder colleagues is here, Yuri Konga, right there. There's a few of us. I'm also an associate at Sworn Facilitation. And what we do at Sworn Facilitation is we connect people to government of all levels, all types, to talk about any issues where decisions have to be made. So public consultation. Anybody here been to a public meeting lately? Couple of hands? Right on, good. So prior to that, I worked in technology and for about 7 years. And so what's really exciting to me is what's happening now is there's this convergence of technology opportunities, opportunities to integrate those with government services and consultation, and here we are. And so just really briefly, the reason I like to say data is human is we often get mired in the technology piece of big data and open data, but without people understanding it and buying into it and being part of it, it's not going to be able to move as fast as it could. So this is really about people too, not just technology. I'm just gonna sort of set the tone for today as to what we're doing. Big data for public good. This is a bit of a thesis here, but data enables big steps towards evidence-based decision-making, both in government and by the public, leading to an improved civic experience. And the asterisk there is with your help, because again, this can't just happen by itself. This requires a lot of people to start to use and be aware of open data and big data in processes that are already existing. As far as the discussion today, we've got an excellent set of people here to start to bring big data and open data to life for you. We've got the agenda set into two pieces. We're going to talk some about innovations in big data and open data, and then we're also going to talk about implications for the public sector. And so one thing I just want to say before we dive into it, I don't know how familiar everyone here is with big data or open data, but case studies, stories, real-life examples of it in use, you're going to hear some of those this afternoon. And so, you know, it should, with every news story, start making a bit more sense. And I'm sure we have a range of backgrounds, but this is going to be a great way to really get a handle of it in context. Not going to say a lot about big data, but I think the key thing is that it really is about it being large. Okay, this isn't kind of a cute name for it. Big data came to be called as such because there is so much of it. So think about big data. It's called big data because it's big. That's it. I'm going to leave it there. We're going to get into more details about that. Now, the other term we're talking about is open data. And I got this picture from a blog called You Had One Job. So open data actually has two jobs. One of its jobs is to be open by default. So if I ask you for something, if I ask you for data and you give it to me, that's not open because I had to ask you. Even though you gave it to me, it's not open. Open means if I need it, I can go straight and get it, and that's it. So open by default is one. The second job open data has is to be machine readable. So that means it has to be something that computers can do something with. You'll hear one of the big enemies in this world is PDFs. There's so much stuff published in PDFs, so it is out there. It's available, but it's not quite open because it really can't be manipulated as easily as other formats that are machine readable. So I think the one message here, because we're hearing these terms and we're hearing them more and more together, is that these are not mutually exclusive terms, but open is about access, big is about size, and there are cases where you could have open, big data. Okay, so you could have both, but they're different things. The reason we're starting to hear about them and often together is that as there's a push to make more data open, there's considerations you have to take into account dealing with the big data, right? So these are not issues that you can keep totally separate, but just to be clear, you're going to be hearing these two things together a lot, and that's why, but there are separate elements. Open is access, big is size, just to like kind of keep those things distinct. And so I just wanted to tell you one quick story here, because it brings the pieces together in a way that makes them kind of, it's exciting to listen to this story to me. So what we have here is a story, this happened in England, and this is a story that starts with the National Health Service. So we have a government agency. The National Health Service had a data set, and I think it's 37 million rows. What this data set is the prescriptions for, these are called statins. They're drugs that you use to mitigate people having heart issues, okay? So they had a huge data set. This data set was open of how these drugs were prescribed across England. And these drugs, what they were looking at was which ones are generic and which ones are branded, right? So they had this data. So there's this huge data set. So that's big data, 37 million rows of it. It's open. The National Health Service had made this open. So here it was sitting out there. Okay, good. So we got those pieces. Then along comes a company. This company is called Mastodon C, and it's a startup. And its service, and this is where we start to connect to economic development and innovation, is to help people deal with their big data. So they're a company that says, hey, you've got a lot of data. I can help you with that because you need to make sense of it. So what they did as a project is they took this data set and they analyzed it. And in 8 weeks, they came back with an analysis that said, if all the doctors were prescribing the generic drug, we have a potential savings of 30 million pounds a month, okay? Just in this one class of drug. And that has been extrapolated to think there's potential up to £1 billion savings if you look at generics versus branded drugs annually in England, which is a massive potential issue to address from a public policy perspective. So this gives you an idea of a story where you have all the players here. You've got government agency, you've got a business who's helping analyze data, you've got an open data set, and you've got big data. So that's how those pieces can all come together. So I'm just going to touch very briefly on some of the trends and some of the challenges. Our panel here today is going to give you a lot more color on these, but I just wanted to touch on a few things briefly just to sort of get the wheels turning. As big data is becoming more frequently used, and it's here and it's growing as a thing, more people need to use it. And as such, we need to have tools that enable more people to use it, right? So it's not like everybody's going to suddenly become a big data expert. So there's an opportunity here to make stuff accessible to people so that people can use this data. Secondly, there's going to be more data workers. Given that this is a trend, it's coming, it's growing, there's going to be more people across all organizations, all sectors that have that as their job description, essentially. They're working with data. There's a civic piece, which is very much the world that I see a connection to all the time right now. There's pressure to make data open. As there's pressure from the citizenry to make data open, you have to work through this stuff, right? So if someone's asking you to open it up, you have to think, how am I doing that? What are the implications? Privacy, which I'll touch on, is a big one that comes up in this case. Building data into the workflow and using it to make decisions. This is a big deal because there's a lot of established processes right now that work well to make decisions. So how do you layer data into those decision-making processes? This is really important to do well because, back to the human element of this, just having data doesn't help you necessarily. You can misapply data. So you have to know how you're applying it and when and at what point in a decision process. And finally, and this one's just from a financial perspective, there will be continued investments in services, infrastructure, and software, because all of this stuff needs support on all three of those areas. To flip side here in terms of challenges, just very, very quickly on them. Volume, we're not stopping with creating more data and then, okay, hey, let's figure it out and then there will be more. It just keeps growing right now, right? So the data is growing and growing and growing while we're concurrently trying to figure out what to do with it. This is a challenge. Privacy is probably the number one challenge you hear about, especially in terms of health data, but lots of other considerations for how you manage privacy. Housekeeping, I always say, I'm not sure people would love to see how I have some of my Excel spreadsheets on my computer, but I know what they mean. And so there's always a concern when you're asked to open up, how you do your work. Will it be understood? Can I put this out there without any liability? What if somebody misinterprets the way that I've got this data organized? Is that going to be my problem? So housekeeping is a big one. Where to start is a great question, because this can be an overwhelming topic. You might know you have so much data that it's almost like you don't want to start dealing with it because you don't even know where to start. That's a challenge. And I think literacy is the final one here, which does relate back to everybody who's using data. You need to understand what you're doing with it in order for it to be helpful. So there's a whole sort of understanding about some of the terms, the implications of using data. There's a whole world in there, and I'm sure everybody here can speak to that in a bit more detail. But basically, you can say open data and big data to a lot of people right now, and they'll kind of do this, right? Yeah, I've heard of that, but I'm not really sure what it means. So this isn't just, next year suddenly there's going to be huge uptick because everyone knows what it is. So these are sort of challenges to keep in mind that have to be addressed. So that's it in terms of just a starting point. I think our panel is going to dig into this stuff in more detail.